welcome back to another Fastlane video. My name is Richard Delka. Today we're gonna be looking at how we can do certain changes to our Azure SQL database, mostly how we can do certain management into it. In the previous video we saw how we can create our Azure SQL database in just a couple of clicks in the Azure Portal. So today we're gonna be checking on that deployment. So let's get into the portal. So here we can see the Fastlane demo DB that we created in the previous video. Here we can see what it is called the overview blade. Something that it's important here to notice is, for example, the server name, and that it's going to be really important if we want to connect to this database from the outside. I mean outside from the portal itself, using mainly, well, let's say SQL Management Studio. Okay, so another important part here is that we need to set the server firewall. That is really important also if we want to connect to this database from the outside. From here we can check on the firewall settings. Now, what is important here is that we have three options at the top. What we're gonna be doing is that this is my client IP address, so I'm going to be adding this client IP, right? So now I will be able to connect to the Azure service from my own computer. After I have done that, this will actually create the existing rule in order in the firewall, so I can connect to this database. So I hit on save, okay, and successfully updated the server firewall rules. Great, awesome. So let's go back to our Fastlane demo DB. Another thing that it's important to notice here is, for example, that we have here the query editor. This is still on a preview version, but if I get here, right, I will be able to launch queries or start writing queries for the database that we created. In this case, remember the demo database AdventureWorks LT. Now, remember here the authorization type that we're going to be using is it is SQL Server Authentication. We have the login, the one that we created, remember, server admin, and then I will just type the password. And then I will be hitting on OK. And that's it. Now I'm inside the query editor. As you can see here, I can see the tables, right? And I can start run some queries into these tables. For example, just a simple query in order to see that it's working. Something like that. Okay, now let's just run this thing. And as you can see here, we get the result: product ID, name, product number, color, standard cost, list price, size, weight, product category ID, etc. So, to be honest with you, this query editor is still on a preview phase, so it won't support many of the transact SQL operations that we can, I don't know, maybe run on a management studio. So that is why we saw how to set up the firewall settings, so we can use instead management studio in order to connect to this actual database. Here we can see the management studio. Now remember what I told you. If we go back into the overview, let's just get out from here. Let's go back into the overview. Now from here, I can see the Fastlane server database windows.net. That is the whole name for the server. I'm going to copy this thing. I'm going to Management Studio and I'm going to hit on connect. Now I'm going to be specifying the whole server name, something like that. Then I will change my login information. Remember, server admin and then the password. And since we have enabled the firewall rule, we should be able to connect to our database in Azure. Here it is. I established the connection. I can open the databases, expand the folder, and I can see that we have here the Fastlane demo DB. And as well, I can start running queries on this thing. As simple as that, as you can see. It's pretty easy and straightforward. We only need to set up our firewall settings and then specify the whole server name so we can connect to the actual database from our computer using the internet, of course. Okay, so another thing that it's important to check in this case is, for example, the connection strings. Let's say that we want to keep adding data using pipelines. If we loaded a blank database, now we want to start loading the information, you know, um, as a part of an ETL process. So most of the time you're gonna be needing what it's called the connection strings. So also if you want to create what it is an ODBC or another database connector, here you can find the actual connection string that you need with the server admin and the password. You need to type the password here, the right password, so it actually connects. Another important topic here would be like checking the intelligent performance, something that is going to be helping us to check on the performance overview of our database, right? Checking on the tuning activity, the top queries, for example, the last query that we just ran in a couple of minutes, that it was only for like 0.37 percentage of overall DTUs that were used, right? The automatic tuning, this is something that it's really important if we want to, let's say, have certain specific plans in order to give management to our database, like forcing a query plan, for example, creating indexes or dropping indexes if it's necessary. Something that is also important, it's the monitoring. Here I can create alerts, and the alerts that I can create can be, well, obviously using a specific metric. I can set up a threshold, let's say for example for DTU usage, right? I need to give it a name, a description, and then that I'm going to be checking on certain metrics. I need to make sure that I'm using my proper subscription, checking on the resource group, and the resource that I'm going to be checking on, which is the Fastlane DemoDB. Now I'm going to be specifying the metric. Let's say DTU used, as we were saying earlier, right? So here we can see a metric, and then we can specify a threshold value. Whenever we go as high as, let's say, 3 DTUs in usage, then you know what? Notify me, please. Over the last, let's say, the last hour. Okay? Once I have specified all those parameters, then I can notify using an email address. Now, believe me, whenever you want to create your alerts, make sure that you have the proper threshold so you don't constantly keep receiving emails from, let's say, false positives, right? You might get overwhelmed with a lot of notifications. Instead of using email address, what you can do is set up a webhook, right? Some sort of a web page on which you can go and check on every single alert that you have created previously. Now, this is some of the management that we have available here regarding our demo database. But not only that, if we go fast, let's check on our server. Now, this is the server that we created that is hosting our SQL instance. Something that is important to notice here is not only the firewall settings, the one that we just configured in order to connect to our database, but also, for example, the access control, the role-based access control. From here, if I have set some sort of an active directory, I will be able to create roles for other users so they can check, for example, something as let's add a new one. Let's check on a new role assignment, something like, let's say, a database reader, right? We can select here a role, and I can make sure that certain persons are only going to be readers of the actual database, right? So they can connect into the database and start performing certain queries. But not only that, I can also create all these different type of roles as well. This is going to be giving me the security that I need, right? And have a more granular control on who is accessing this database, on what they can or cannot do. About the access control, another option that it's really important to check on here is that I can see every single database that it's in this SQL instance. Check on any SQL Elastic pools. Remember that if I have many databases in the same instance, then I will be able to check on, well, let's say, manage the performance between those databases as the workload demanded. Okay, and another important topic might be here the failover groups. I can create another group on which I'm going to be failovering to, just in case of, let's say, as a disaster recovery solution. So, I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. This was just an overview about management, what we can or cannot do with our SQL database in Azure. My name is Richard Delker, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Goodbye.